Welcome to Better Business Results. My name is John Whitt, and I'm your host. We work with business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and sales teams to improve their businesses in 30 minutes or less. I'm a small business owner, a published author, and a recognized leader with FocalPoint International Business Coaching, where we have over 180 coaches on all 7 continents. Albert Einstein is quoted as saying that compound interest is the most powerful formula in the universe. Improving your business 0.1% each day can generate as much as a 24% improvement in less than 1 year. You can engage and harness this formula for your business by creating 3 action items in just 30 minutes each week. Let's get started. So welcome to today's episode of Better Business Results. Our guest today is Greg James with Plaza Bank. Greg, we'll let Greg tell us a little bit about it, but thanks for joining us, Greg.
John, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So Greg, without me getting into any preamble, why don't you share a little bit with the audience, sort of Plaza Bank, how did you get there, a little history of Greg?
Sure. I've been a business banker for about 15 years. I started off in equipment financing with Citigroup a long time ago, and I did that for about 3 years, really enjoyed it. And then I went over to a very large retail bank, Wells Fargo, and I stayed there for about 12 years. So I was a business consultant there, worked my way to a senior business consultant, working with small businesses that were generally about 2 to 20 million in sales. Over the course of time, though, I began to have an interest in wanting to work at a really small bank. I wanted to learn the nuts and bolts.
A smaller bank.
A smaller bank, yeah. I wanted to learn the nuts and bolts of that. I wanted to wear a little bit more hats as opposed to just being in the sales cycle. And one thing led to another, and I was introduced to where I'm at now, which is Plaza Bank, about a year ago. And it's been a really good move. It's been a great move. And so we do things a little bit differently.
Oh, well, let's share a little bit. First, tell us a little bit about your ideal client, the type of client that really gets the most value out of Plaza Bank and working with Greg.
Got it. So I think my ideal client, or the clients that I've been able to attract to the bank and our core client base there now, is typically an entrepreneur, relatively revenue size about 5 to 75, maybe $100 million in revenue. It's a company that is interested in growth. It's a company that's interested in taking it to the next level. I like to say that most of my companies or customers are maybe a $10 million or $15 million company that want to get to $20 or $25 million. And they come to us because they need growth capital. They are maybe referred by another bank or a CPA firm. Maybe their bank right now isn't been paying attention to them. They're a legacy customer of that bank. Maybe they're not getting the kind of lines of credit or the term loans that they would like, or they're not getting the kind of attention that they think they like. So they come to me, and with my experience being in banking for 15 years and the support that I have at Plaza Bank, we're able to really deep dive into our customers and their balance sheet and their profit and loss, and to really see where we can help them, where we can get the capital needed to grow.
So we're looking at small businesses, but really 5 million, maybe up to $100 million, and the typical challenges they have is they're not getting serviced where they're at today. Do they actually understand how banking works and what banking should be, or is that one of their challenges as well?
Yeah, I think that is a challenge of my customer base. I typically think that a customer starts off entrepreneur, they start their business, they get friends and family, or they get a small bank loan, and they think, okay, that was great, now let's just keep growing. And they think the bank is going to do the same thing every time, no matter how big they grow. There are different size banks out there. There's different flavors. For the small mom and pop shop, the retail bank might be a great place. Or if you're going to deposit a lot of cash, maybe a big retail bank might be the way to go. If you're a big multi-billion dollar company, obviously the big commercial banks might be a good space. But for the small to emerging growth business customer of the 5 to 75 or $100 million, there are a lot of good banking sources in the regional and community bank space, and that's where Plaza Bank plays the space. So we don't sell we don't sell wealth management, we don't sell insurance, we don't sell merchant card, we don't sell all those ancillary services. We do what we do really well, and our experience is in loans, lines, and treasury management and cash management products. That's all we do. We don't try to sell widgets. We don't try to sell extra credit cards or debit cards or any of that kind of stuff.
So you've got a depth of experience
Yep.
in that specific chain.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that you do a little deeper dive, a little digging when you work with your clients to maybe
put together different kinds of solutions. Can you share a little bit more about that? What are some of the things
Sure.
you look at?
Well, we're not tasked with trying to sell a lot of wallet share. What big banks like to call wallet share is widgets, debit cards, credit cards, other lines of credit, personal accounts, that kind of thing. We do personal accounts, but we concentrate primarily 90% of our work is with businesses. So where a big bank is wanting to sell a lot of widgets, they have a faster a sales track. So they're going, if they can approve you, great. If they can't approve you, they're going to do a quick decline and they're going to walk you out the door and say, you know what, I can't get creative on your financing. You have some issues that I can't get around. You're therefore declined. Good luck. It's been nice talking to you. A small community bank or a regional bank is going to probably get a little bit more involved. My experience shows that if you really take the time to talk with the customer or the prospect, really understand where they're coming from, what mistakes they might have made, what mitigants have been put in place, where they want to go forward. And we really look at their balance sheet, their profit and loss, their income statement, what their business history and experience is, and what other partners they have in place. If we can get to understand those, if we can really understand, okay, you've maybe made a mistake or you had a downturn in business, maybe the recession hurt or didn't, but if you have figured out where you want to go, I think we can get there and we can help you get the capital need. We've got some experiences where a customer came to me not long ago and said, look, I've got a noose around my neck. I've got $500,000 in debt. It's expensive. I need to get out of this and I need a line of credit to grow. I want to hire more people. I want to hire more equipment. Business is booming, but my other bank is seeing these kind of past mistakes I've made and they're not giving me the capital I need. We looked at that and said, we can do that. We can term out that debt. We can give you a better rate. We can give you better cash flow on that, and we can increase your line. We looked at, we approved it. We did about $750,000 in total debt for the customer with the term debt and the line of credit. He's now gone from $12 million to $15 million and up, and that's only been a 9-month period because he now has the capital to do with what he wants.
And so he was able to get that through sort of your service, and
Yeah.
again, because of the size of the bank you are, the specific focus you have, the approach that you take. That's a pretty big story.
It's a compelling story. It's the experience that, I've been in banking, business banking specifically for 15 years, and I'm probably one of the least tenured guys in our bank. We've got folks that have experience from anywhere from 10 to 35 years in business banking, just business banking. We have a lot of network partners that are able to bring in to help. Well, we know a lot of CPAs that can pilot in and help. We know a lot of course, coaches that'll help out.
Sure.
So when we work with our customers, we try to say, look, we're not here just to sell you a widget. We don't want to talk about all of your personal and your investment products. We want to help you concentrate on business, and everything else will flow from there. Our entrepreneurs and our customers are usually sole owners, or maybe they have a partnership, or there's 3 people. It's not a publicly traded company. They get that it's lonely at the top, and their assets are on the line every day. They need to keep in business so they can employ their people and grow.
Well, it's lonely at top. At the top is such a key example.
It's lonely at the top. I hear that all the time from my customers. Greg, I run a $30 million business. I make good money, but honestly, it's lonely at the top, and I'm always stressing about the next day. How are we going to get through this issue? So I try to sit down with them and say, okay, what are your issues? Where do you want to grow? If you want to grow, can we supply capital? Do you want to grow? Do you want to become a $30 million from a $20 million and all the headaches that come along with that?
You mentioned when we were talking earlier that there's some ancillary services that you provide. They're not necessarily banking, right? So these are the sort of the hidden benefits that come along with dealing with not just Plaza Bank, but with Greg. Mm-hmm. Share some of those.
Well, I think that behind every good banker, whether it's a private personal banker or a business banker, there's a network of people. There's a network of people that banker can draw upon to help in any situation, whether it be right-sizing or straightening out your financial structure, or a legal problem that you might have, or a coaching issue, a sales growth issue, or a marketing kind of program. So what I try to do is, as I think any good banker should, I network a lot. I try to figure out who's out there, who's playing in the similar space that I do, who can I work with to bring to bear on the problems that we have with our customers. Best case scenario, I think as a business owner should keep in contact with their banker on a regular basis, their CPA, their lawyer, their coach, And I think maybe at some point all these people should sit down together at a table with the business owner and say, here's the issues that we see. I think here's how we can collaborate and make those things happen.
So that's a pretty good tip.
Yeah.
Right. What so how often? So basically, just getting those guys together, right, and talking as a team, right? How often should something like that happen? Do you think?
Well, I like to keep in contact with my customers at least once a quarter. I think that's minimal. A business banker should keep in contact with his customer once a quarter to review financials, see how things are going, see if the plan that they discussed when that line of credit was initiated, if that plan's on track, great. If it's not, why? Who can we bring to bear to make that happen? If there's no loan program in place and it's just a depository relationship, sure, maybe 6 months, maybe even once a year is fine. But I think that every business banker, if there's a credit involved especially, should be in contact with their customer, and their customer should initiate the contact at least once a quarter. Absolutely.
Okay. And then what other tips do you have for our audience here? These are business owners that probably may or may not know as much about banking. Certainly don't know as much about banking as you do.
Well, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of different banks out there. There's a lot of sizes and flavors. If you are considering changing a bank, or if you want to become more engaged with your banker, understand what your needs are, and understand, more importantly, what are the capabilities of that bank. Do they have the kind of products and services that you need? Do they have the basics? Are they really good at really fine-tuning those basics like a Plaza Bank would be? Or do you need someone, okay, for instance, if the customer says, I might want to retire in 5 years, I might want to sell this business, does your bank have investment banking capital or mergers and acquisitions capability or experience? Can they do an ESOP? Can they help you transition the newfound wealth that you might be coming on board? Do you understand the tax implications?
So if I'm not a banking expert, right, and I take your advice and I say, listen, I should evaluate, understand what it is that I need, but because I really don't know banking, I may not know really what I need. I feel like there's a little catch-22 there. What should I do?
Ask your banker.
Ask your banker.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking about doing this. The best case scenario, I think, is if a customer comes to me and says, I have an idea. I think I want to take this step. Do you have the capability to do that? Can you help me find someone to do that? If I can't do it, the best thing I can do for my customer is to point him in the right direction. I can't do that, but I know someone who can. I can't do that type of financing, but I know someone who has that experience and the capital to make that happen. I can't help you sell your business, let's say, but I do know someone who can coach you to that, whether it's a lawyer or a CPA or a coach or any of those kinds of things. I think any good business service provider is going to have a network of people to draw from.
So we talk about goal setting. I work with goal setting in my clients all the time, and some people have never done it, and some people say, let's do it once a year. My personal recommendation is twice a year. It's every 6 months with a quarterly check and update. And so if you're doing goal setting, and we often look at January and July as those two, because January is sort of a down month for so many different industries. If you have a different fiscal year, then you might shift that a little bit. But based on those, when you're putting together your strategic plan or something of that sort, shortly thereafter you should be having a conversation with your banker, or maybe putting together that team session with the CPA and the attorney and the banker. Sort of a lunch. It's almost like a what do we call it? It's almost like it's a peer group. It's a peer group review that you can get everybody together that's kind of focused in on your particular business.
I agree.
So understanding your different partners and clients, what do you think the biggest challenge that they face is?
I think what I hear from my customers, the biggest challenge they face is, like I mentioned earlier, it's lonely at the top. They're always stressed because they are in charge, and the decisions they make will impact 10 to 70 people or more. That's a big responsibility. They want to make sure they can keep the motor running so that everybody gets paid. They want to make sure that they don't have to lay anybody off and go out of business. The customer I mentioned earlier that we did the reterm on his loan and a line of credit, he never laid anybody off. He actually put a gym in place in his business so that his guys could come in after a stressful day of building things and blow off some steam by working out. He raised some pay on some key people. So I think The challenges my customers face, besides it's lonely at the top, are time management. They're always under the gun to get something done, and it's always an emergency. They come to me and say, I have an emergency. I need an increase in line of credit. If you come to your banker with an emergency, it might be too late. What I try to suggest is, if you structure, I think you structure your minutes as you structure your day, as you structure your month and your year. If you can learn how to structure your minutes in your day, everything else will follow suit. If you can stay ahead of the curve and not figure out what's urgent that I need to do today, what can I do on a regular basis that keeps me ahead of the curve and doesn't stress me out? Like, for instance, in my day, I used to come in every day and answer a lot of emails and try to return a bunch of calls and try to put out fires all morning long. And then by the afternoon, I was kind of worn out, and I didn't have enough energy to kind of do the things I really need to do, which was talk about loans, structure a deal, get approvals, transfer funds, that kind of thing.
Before you get into that,
Yeah.
okay, I want to go through this principle that we talked about.
Okay.
This is actually the urgent, important quadrant that I first learned about from Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Got it.
And I want to go through this with you, and then I think it'll apply directly to what you were talking about, and we can talk about what might make some sense for you down the road as far as continuing to improve that business, as all owners and business owners are trying to accomplish.
Sounds good.
So again, urgent, important. We take a look at this thing called 4 squares. And a lot of tools are 4 square oriented. In the top left, we've got this box called urgent and important. And we look at this 2 ways. Urgent, it needs to be done right now, it needs to be right away. Important means that it has high consequences.
Okay.
Right. And so there's a certain batch of information, tasks, action items that fit into this particular bucket. And the challenge with this bucket and anything that fits into that is that this urgency component often means that it takes longer, right? Because we're rushing and we have to redo it again, right? And because it's really important, we have to take all the time and the energy to do it very, very well and to do it just right. And unfortunately, because we've thrown urgency into the mix, it makes it a lot more challenging. The other bucket is the important but not urgent, right? So this is often where the planning bucket is, right? If I don't do the planning today, it's probably not the end of the world. But if I never do it, it is probably going to be a big deal, right? So it's important, but it's not urgent. And this is the kind of thing that we struggle with getting done because it's so easy to kick it out and push it off to the next item. And we have to talk about what are strategies to make this stuff happen, to get it onto the particular calendar. And we'll come back to those in just a minute. We take a look at urgent but not important, right? So it's something I need to do right away, but it's not very important. So the consequences on this particular item aren't significant. Okay. So if you made a mistake on it, it's not that consequential. So this is the type of thing that we ideally might find a way to delegate to somebody else, right? Because even if they can't do it as well as you do, if they don't do it perfectly well, consequences aren't that dramatic. And ultimately, we have this box that says not urgent and not important. And if you've got things to fit into this bucket, this is the bucket that you want to just try to X out and eliminate, right? Because it's not urgent, doesn't need to be done right away, and it's not important. There's no consequence. So we figure out how to get rid of those. And often for business owners, they're doing some things that they don't even know or understand. It's habitual almost, where if they took made a list of the activities that they're spending time on. They might find some items that are not urgent and not important, and then we just figure out how do we just cross those off the list and move those to someplace else. Yeah. Same list, we could say, look, these are some things I'd like to delegate. And those 2 things are really important. The top 2 boxes, the important ones, are really the key focus, right? The way we stay out of the urgent and important box, the top left quadrant, right, is to focus on the top right quadrant. So if we're spending on the important but not urgent time, so now this is where we're planning, we're putting the strategy together, that will allow us to stay out of the urgent and important bucket. So the idea there is just to try to stay out of the top left bucket. So in terms of this, think about in terms of your clients and what do they expect? They come to you and you said something about a loan and they need it right away.
Yeah, I'm dealing with that right now. I've got a client who needs a loan done very quickly. And the reason why they need a loan quickly is because they worked probably a little too long with another bank that the banker should have known they couldn't have done this loan. This particular scenario doesn't merit what they want. And so they come to me at the last minute saying, I need a loan. It's got to be done in a certain time frame, but it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts. We have to look at balance sheet. We have to look at personal tax returns and all the other things that bankers do. and we're being time pressed to get it done in a certain instance, where if we had probably another 2 weeks, it would be a much cleaner deal. Are we going to be able to do this? I think so. But I think because it was urgent, but to them they felt not important, they put it off and put it off because they thought someone else was handling it for them and they weren't paying attention. So it's now a fire drill. I would much rather have my customer be more proactive with their banker up front and say, this is our plan. Can you do this? If they're a good banker, they should be able to say yes and no fairly rapidly.
What help you? What does fairly rapidly mean?
Well, in this instance, they need a pretty good credit facility, and the other bank took 6 weeks to say no.
How long? What's reasonable?
What's reasonable in this case is 1 month at least. But
About 4 weeks.
They went about 2 or 3 weeks too long, and now we're into crunch time, where they really need to make this happen, and we're having to put out some fires and it really explain a lot of detail to our group. And we have a lot of people in our bank that are tasked with doing a lot of approvals for a lot of deals, and to try to fit this one in the time frame, it puts stress on everybody.
Yeah.
It puts stress on the customer.
A lot of stress.
So that comes back to, if you're going to delegate your minutes as you do your day, as you do your week, try to keep your banker apprised of what your plans are so your banker can anticipate what you want to do, and ask them, is this something you're comfortable with doing? Is this something your bank has experience doing? Is this something you think could get approved? Now, certain things happen in loan processes we can't anticipate in the last minute that means a decline for a customer, but there was a reason in this one that the other bank should have known right away that this would
Should have been there. Does having the client, should they have asked the banker early on, how long will this process take?
They should have, and the other banker said it should take a month, and it took more than 6 weeks. And
Okay.
we're at crunch time. He finally had to pull the cord on that when the other bank said, I don't think we're going to be able to do this deal, after the customer had already spent sizable time and effort and money to try to get this loan done.
Yeah, big deal.
And so now we're going to be able to do it, but it's stressful for the client because it's stressful for the bank, it's stressful for the client. It could have been easily avoided if they would have just been proactive and asked a couple questions.
So we talk about the ways that you mentioned communicating with your banker.
Yep.
And if they're communicating with their banker on a quarterly basis, this probably shows up 3 months in advance, and the initial discussions are there, and you probably don't have that particular challenge. So clearly that tip of setting up some time and energy to make that happen, that's the important but not urgent item, right? It's setting time up with your banker isn't urgent. If you didn't do it today, probably could do it tomorrow, right? But if you never do it, then it causes problems.
And that's where this problem came up. They kind of talked about it loosely, and then all of a sudden, hey, we really want to do this now. And the banker said, we can do it.
So important but not urgent. The way I work with my clients there is I say that's got to go on a calendar somewhere, right? We have to allocate some time or some minutes to this particular activity. Now you might say it's a half an hour and it's next week, or it's 2 weeks, or it's 3 weeks, and then you have to sort of honor that commitment as a contract with yourself, so that you don't just keep pushing it out, right? Because there's always something else that comes up. There's always something that will kick it out, and it seems to be more urgent. But at some point, again, if you don't do this at all, then you have much bigger challenges.
Absolutely. I think the best thing any business owner can do is to regularly keep in contact with their partners, and all the partners, and let them know their space, let them know their thoughts, let them know what they want to do.
So, I mean, and when you say partners, you're CPAs, attorneys.
Every good entrepreneur or business owner should be in regular contact with their attorney, a good attorney that can handle that size of business. Certainly a good CPA firm, because honestly, a lot of my companies that come to me, they've started off as entrepreneurs. They had an idea, they've grown a business, and they're still working with maybe a small bookkeeper, which is great when they're starting up. But when you become a $10, $15, $20 million company, perhaps maybe a more established CPA firm that can handle that size of tax return or that size of financing might be a better play. So understand what their capabilities are. Understand that different banks have different tastes and different flavors and different aptitudes for loans, lines, credits, deposit products, different type of businesses who are doing international or domestic business. So keep in contact with your lawyer, your CPA, your banker, a coach who can kind of keep you on track and keep you apprised of what's going on in the world. stay up to date on periodicals and trade magazines, and maybe get out there and network with other people that are in your trade or in your market, and maybe befriend some people who aren't in your market. Get
So
there.
running a business is so much more than just selling products and services.
It's so much more than making something, selling something, and spending that money on your next trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, coming back to our time management, right? So everybody experiences this. Everybody has this bucket that they're dealing with, right? And then you were beginning to tell a little story about some changes that you had just recently made in your schedule that sort of address some of this.
Absolutely. So I come in every morning, and for a while it was answer emails, read emails, answer emails, make phone calls, put out fires, address things that were, I thought, urgent, but really weren't important. And you get sidetracked into doing that. And the next,
It's almost a habit.
it's a habit. Another bad habit I think a lot of people do, even business owners, bankers, and the rest of us, is you get caught up in the planning stage. I'm going to plan my day, and that means I'm going to plan a spreadsheet for activities. I'm going to plan a spreadsheet for my next marketing campaign. I'm going to plan a spreadsheet for delegation of who I want to do the things that I need done. And you can get caught up in that fun planning stage, but then it comes down to I need to execute.
You got to do.
You got to do. You can't just sit there with a spreadsheet of names you got to call and fires you need to do. You need to sit down and actually do this. And so what I've kind of tried to do in the last 6 months or so, I say, okay, look, every morning I come in, I'm going to do a certain thing. I'm going to contact my customers, keep in contact with them. I'm going to contact prospects. I'm going to contact my network. That's what I do in the morning now. I don't put out fires. I try not to read emails. I scan them very quickly. I figure out which ones might need a
It's hard. It's hard.
but I try to
You
pick
never
one
know.
or two. I pick one or two, but I let the rest go. Because I like everyone, I get a lot of emails every morning. I must get 20 or 30 emails when I come in every morning. So I go scan through those. But I reserve my mornings for keeping contact with the people who make a difference. Whether it's someone I need to delegate an issue to, or a prospect, or a customer, or a network partner on the outside. And then I leave my afternoons for handling the heavy lifting. I need to get some tax returns. I need to review some tax returns. I need to review some financials. I need to push a credit through to approval. I need to call back my customer and get some more detail on that. I leave that for really what I call my production time.
So in terms of your time today and what
Yeah.
you're trying to get accomplished, and you have your goals and you have your objectives, what are the kind of challenges that you run into today in managing your time and trying to get everything done?
Customers who want me to run through fire drills when they'll call me in the morning and say, I really need to get this done, I really need to get it done. That obviously becomes a priority. But I try to coach them to say, is this something that could have been handled differently? Could we have done this yesterday? Is it a fire drill because you put this off? Other issues are what I find day to day are just intrusions of time. Emails, mass emails, and you've got to get good at figuring out which ones you can delete and which ones you need to get back on. Because I really am trying to structure
just all of the distractions.
All the
and it could be
distractions.
somebody coming in and knocking on your door, or it's being able
Yeah.
to stay focused in on the task that you have at hand.
People I work with know now that from 8 until noon, my door is closed. It's not locked, but it's closed, and I am on the phone. I'm on the phone talking to people. I'm on the phone prospecting. I'm on the phone with customers, seeing how they're doing. I'm on the phone with networking partners. I'm on the phone with maybe other people in the bank to figure out some ideas. That's my phone time.
How much time are you spending on emails on a daily basis? I mean, we all fight this fight.
Email has become so pervasive that I probably spend a good hour or two on emails and just slogging information back and forth. I think the best thing that Marbank has done is to bypass the email system, and instead of sending emails back and forth with attachments, we have a central electronic file. So we put these things into the file, and then other people can go in the bank, of course, into that file and get that information, make changes, make adjustments. That's really, I think, saved you a lot of time. Otherwise, I've got my email box, and I'm sending you some attachments, and you're sending it back, and we're sending it back.
So a
and forth.
shared document.
So we have it's called a share file, and it's a
Yeah,
very good
yeah,
document process.
yeah.
And if any business owner, for that matter, can do that with either production product line or other things, if you can centralize the process, I think that goes a long way to really cutting down time and emails.
So going back to our deal, right?
Yep.
Urgent and important, urgent, not important and not urgent, urgent but not important. Do you have anything that you should be looking at from a delegation standpoint, or are there some things, or should you be taking a new look maybe at all the list of things that you're looking at and saying, listen, how do they fit into these buckets and how can I do things differently?
I'm trying to stay out of the urgent and important box as much as possible, and I'm trying to stay in the important but not urgent, because if I make it important but it's not urgent, I'm going to make better decisions. I'm going to have the time to think creatively about what I can do to solve the problem before it becomes a fire drill and I'm just trying to put a Band-Aid on a leak.
Yeah, and this would be something that the business owner, pretty much anybody and everybody, would, if they could spend some time in this area, would make things a lot easier, a lot more effective.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have to be very cognizant of our time, because for me especially as a banker, time is money.
Well, I don't just for you especially. I think it's everybody. I think
I agree.
and a lot of times we don't even realize that that's the case. And we get wrapped up into doing something, and you don't realize what you're giving away. There's 24 hours today and 24 hours yesterday and 24 hours tomorrow. It's the same time, so it's not like you never have enough time. It's the same time. You've got the same amount that you always have had.
Right.
It's all about your choices and how do you decide to use that.
I do find that how you manage your minute is how you manage your day, is how you manage your week. And if you let those minutes go by, pretty soon you're going home at 5 or 6 or 7 o'clock at night saying, what did I accomplish today? And was that my plan this morning when I came in ready to go with a cup of coffee in my hand? Did I get done what I want to get done? Or did you let time slip away with innocuous emails that didn't make any sense, or people from your production line saying, we need to get this done, when it really wasn't that important issue?
Yeah. Greg, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Jim.
Before we wrap, you hadn't been on the show before and hadn't had anybody. Tell me a little bit about your experience. What'd you think of this?
This is great. I don't think I've ever done an interview on camera before, so it's been awfully fun. I'm usually, doing this kind of thing with a prospect or a networking partner over coffee. So this has been fun.
Good. Well, thank you. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate sharing the information with our audience.
Okay.
All right. Until next week.
If you'd like to be a guest on our show, contact BusinessWhitt at www.businesswhitt.com. Filmed in studio at John Whitt Enterprises, Advanced Coaching and Marketing Solutions, 2 Park Plaza, number 450, Irvine, California, 92614.